Hello and welcome to FVTV. I'm Thomas Parker and today I'm going to talk to you about Château Cantemerle 2012. Château Cantemerle is an Médoc that's situated just to the south of Margaux, and Château Cantemerle itself is in fact one of the first chateaux that you'd see if you ever visit the Bordeaux region and you decide to drive up through the Médoc. It appears just on the left on the D2, which is the main sort of artery that connects the whole of the left bank of Bordeaux. It's a fifth growth, this chateau. Classified in 1855, or in fact, it wasn't. It was supposed to be. It was one of the only changes that they ever made to the 1855 classification, as it was intended to be classified and then wasn't. But thanks to the perseverance of the chateau and their owners at the time, it was actually added to the classification in 1856. And that's quite a feat, as it's one of very few changes that have ever been made to that classification, the most famous being in 1973 that Mouton Rothschild was converted to a first growth. Château Cantemerle was in a long line of family ownership for quite a while, and the vineyard fell slightly into disrepair until it was bought by an insurance group in the 1980s. And since then, they've done a lot of work. They had to do quite a lot of replanting and a lot of changes in the vineyard and the winery. One of the biggest things was, in fact, that Château Cantemerle used to be planted with quite a lot of Cabernet Franc, nearly 25%, and now that's dropped to about 5%. Cabernet Sauvignon is still the majority as we're on the left bank, but as we're further south, you still see quite a lot of Merlot. The vineyard is planted with about 60% Cabernet Sauvignon and about 30% Merlot. And that's similar to what we have in this wine. It's just less than 60% of Cabernet and just over 30% of Merlot. The winemaking is quite classic for Bordeaux. It spends its time in barrel. It has 12 months in barrel, of which about 40% is new. So there's that subtle hint of toastiness rather than something too overt in this wine. This 2012 I thought was a great wine to show, as the 2012s are so charming and forward, and I thought it would be a perfect wine for drinking now. So let's take a sniff. It's really classically Bordeaux, I think. Very savoury, very cedary. There's actually quite a lot of red fruit in here as well as the black fruit, and I think partly that's the vintage. You get a lot of cherry and plum as well as that sort of fresh blackcurrant, and there's a real hedgerow quality to it. It's all about the freshness, this wine. On the palate, yeah, this showcases exactly what 2012 is supposed to be. It's really seamless and silky, which for an Médoc at this stage is quite surprising. It's completely integrated tannin, really just allowing the juiciness of the fruit to show. But it's also all about freshness. That acidity is really keeping everything in check and adds the structure where the tannins are maybe sort of soft and fallen into the wine. Again, as on the nose, there's quite a lot of red fruit as well as the black fruit. A lot of sort of cedar. There's also that kind of dried leaf and fresh sort of undergrowth notes in there, which I quite like, and it adds a bit of that savoury complexity that you want in Bordeaux like this. I would drink this now. I think I've talked about in previous videos the sort of approachability of 2012 as a vintage, and this is a classic example of that. These wines are designed for me to be drunk in their first sort of 15, maybe 20 years, but I would say first 15 years for all but the very top names, because they are so charming. This wine falls exactly into that category. I'd drink it over the next maybe 6 or 7 years, maybe 8 years, depending on how savoury you like your wines. But this is a perfect kind of wine to drink while you're waiting for things like 2009s and 2010s, even 2005s, and obviously those 2016s to come round. And it has a real place for that. And the wines are actually very good value as a result. So worth checking these wines out, and especially this Cantemerle 2012. If you'd like to know more about this wine or about the other wines that Far Vintners have to offer, as always, go to farvintners.com. Until next time, cheers.